revised agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approval of the minutes. Special work session, strategic planning meeting of June 17, 2019. Special work session meeting of June 17, 2019. And the regular meeting of June 17, 2019. Approve. What's the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Goshek, second by Councilmember Storley. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approval of the bills. Checks 100829 through 100909, totaling $824,637.68. Approve. What is the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Knopfler, second by Councilmember Lundberg. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mr. Archer.
Thank you. Thank you for bumping me up ahead, too. We left off talking about the water utility fund. Before I move on, just because we kind of cut it off, any questions before I move on? Okay, we're going to move on here then. So the next fund that we're going to talk about is the wastewater fund. Wastewater fund really had very similar operations compared to in the past, but because the wastewater fund primarily is billed based on water consumption, that decrease in water consumption that affected the water fund is also affecting the wastewater fund, which you can see on this page here. So with that, revenues this year came in at $2,059,000, down from last year, which was $2,334,000. With that, though, we still were able to have operating income of $870,000. This fund, after all transfers, all other activity, had an increase in net position of $749,000. Looking at stormwater fund next, stormwater had remarkably similar operations compared to last year, with operating loss of $5,900. Beyond that, we've got some transfer activity. This fund had a decrease in net position this year of just under $10,000. The net position in this fund, too, I have on the page, is $798,000. Okay. Municipal golf course is the next fund. The golf course has got some activity going on. If you remember back to last year, we had an increase in expenditures in the golf course, mostly because of some improvements that you all had done in that year, which you can see on that red line that kind of peaks in last year. This year is a little bit more normalized, but we're still looking at an operating loss in the golf course, which isn't unusual for the golf course if we look at the trend over the last 5 years or so, and beyond that also. So the golf course had a operating loss of $143,000. From there, we've got some non-operating revenues coming in, totaling $122,000. This is also partially transfers. This fund had a change in net position of a deficit of $37,000. If we look at the next page here, I've actually got some metrics here on golf course operations in terms of gross profit. If we look at the gross profit here, and we're going to just focus maybe on the last 3 years, gross profit has steadily decreased slightly over the past 3 years. And if we look at how this is broken up, we've got pro shop activity, we've got food pop candy activity, and we've got liquor sales. Pro shop, we're not going to worry much about pro shop because there's actually very little pro shop inventory and sales going on anymore. If we rewind back to 2015 and 2016, you can see actually negative gross profit in those areas. That's because there was a significant write-off of obsolete inventory in those years. And so they've been written off on an accounting treatment. You maybe still have it, but the value of it had diminished enough that it was written down. But looking at maybe more specifically the food sales and the liquor sales, there has been a small decrease in gross profit over the last 3 years here. In the last number of years, I can't even remember going back how far now, we've had management letter advice comments about golf course operations, profitability. I did make a remark to Lori that this is probably the last year that I'm going to include those comments in here, mostly because I don't want to keep repeating the same thing year after year after year. And I think you all have come to accept the operations of the golf course. New recommendation this year, though, is that maybe you want to look at the frequency of how often you're making cash deposits, so the cash on hand at the golf course. A best practice would be to deposit it daily, and that's maybe not always happening. Okay, recycling and garbage fund. Here, the biggest activity is that we've got a full year with the new billing structure, with the new canisters and everything. And so you're kind of seeing the first real year of operations here. Total revenue coming in at $693, so just under $700,000. We've got operating expenses of $639,000, so we've got operating income of $53,000. This fund had an increase in fund balance or net position of $20,000 this year. And this page has got the cash trends. I won't go into the detail on all of them other than to point out that the decrease in cash this year in the water utility fund is because of the completion of that water project. Okay, this page and the next page take a look at the health of your city with all funds combined as a whole. And it also adds in things like the value of your capital assets, which aren't recorded in fund financials, and the dollar amount of long-term debt, which is going to be on the next page here. If we look at the overall size of your city's assets this year, and actually really over the last 5 years, there's not a lot of movement. And if we look specifically at the current assets, which is the blue category here, that's things like your cash, your receivables that you have that are going to be converted to cash in the next year. They're very similar as well. Really, the growth in total assets this year is driven by capital investments that you've made, so construction activity and equipment purchases. If we look at the next page here and look at the liability, the liabilities of the city, these have been decreasing over the last 4 years. There was a slight uptick from 14 to 15. The green represents your pension liabilities, and the reason that there are no pension liabilities recorded in 2014 is because the standard that required the recording of those didn't happen until 2015. But if we look at this, the biggest takeaway here is that your long-term debt has been steadily decreasing over the last 4 years, which you're actually going to see on the next page also. This is broken up governmental activities and business type activities. Business type funds have long-term debt of $1.65 million at the end of the year. Governmental funds have long-term debt of $11,555,000. If I would have had 5 more minutes, I would have got through this at the work session, but just didn't quite talk fast enough. Any questions at all on the audit or our process or anything I went over or anything I didn't go over?
Mr. President, I would just add, John, that you've been doing this for a long time, and I appreciate the abbreviated form with just as much information as we ever got. So, and I've heard this from numerous entities I belong to.
Sure.
So thank you for that, because it's much easier to digest and grasp in this form than it is with the 140 pages.
Thank you.
Next will be our consent agenda. 2018 audit, Schlenner-Wenner receive. Application to conduct excluded bingo, American Legion Auxiliary, Morrison County Fair, approve. Fire report, May 2019, receive. Hire Noah Bozer, laborer, streets and parks, authorize and approve. Liability insurance waiver, League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, deny. Show dance license, Great River Arts, Arts in the Park, July 27th, 2019, approve. Show license, Haiti Partnership, First United Church, August 3rd, 2019, approve. What is the wish of the council?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Goshek to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. No public hearings or lettings. Next will be old business. Ordinance number 18, 7th series, amend City Code Chapter 4, Municipal and Public Utilities, Section 4.20, cross-connection control, introduced 6/17/2019. Adopt. What is the wish of the city council?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 18, cross-connection control.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Goshek, second by Councilmember Knopfler.
Was
Any discussion?
wrong councilman.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was you.
Yes, Mr. President.
Motion by Councilmember Henson. Sorry about that.
But I didn't notice I was preparing to ask my question.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thanks, Mr. President. Greg, I'm just wondering are we catching up on something here that was missed, addressing a specific situation, or what's the?
No, so every year we go through and we have one member from the Department of Health kind of go through in our water plant as well as our ordinance just to see if we're missing anything. They made a recommendation to include something such as this. It is in state code that it's a requirement to have these tested, but we don't have anything in our ordinance to say if you don't test it or if there's an issue, then we have the ability to, turn off the water or do something like that. So it's more of a preventative measure. We haven't had any issues with any cross connections,
Okay.
but
I was just wondering, we didn't
yeah,
look at something for a permitting issue and
Nope.
go, whoa, look at that. That's not cool.
trying to be proactive.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Council President, I just want to clarify this, the backflow prevention device. So this is, correct me if I'm wrong, so if somebody is on city water and they also have a well, that well could potentially backflow and contaminate our city water, and this is to prevent that?
So we don't allow a well to be hooked up to our city water system. So those, we would not be allowed any sort of connection. These are mainly for fire suppression systems where you have potentially a fire truck that would hook up to a sprinkler system, which would then boost the pressure and could potentially come back into our system. We want to make sure that there's a backflow preventer so that when it boosts that pressure, it doesn't come back into our system, it stays in the building itself. And so that's what this does, that makes sure that they are required to test that backflow preventer to make sure that it cannot get backflowed into our system.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Ordinance, call a roll, please.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Liljegren.
Yes.
Lundberg.
Yes.
Silka.
Yes.
Hurkak.
Yes.
Storley.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik.
Yes.
Carries.
Ordinance number 19, 7th series, authorize and direct sale of property, Barrett Land LLC, introduced 6/17/19.
Mr. President, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules, and instead of bringing up a motion to accept it, that we discuss it first, and maybe possibly, if the answers can't be submitted, that we make, instead of a motion to accept, we make a motion to postpone. So I would like to make that motion to suspend the rules for right now.
We would need a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Aren't we going to have a discussion regardless? If we would have,
Well, if we vote no to this, then we can make
Yeah,
a
I'm
motion.
seeing there's no benefit in this, but it's all right, because we wouldn't have the discussion either
right?
way.
That's my point. That's all I was asking.
Well,
Have it.
But instead of making the motion to either accept it or reject it, if we have the discussion first, we can ask the questions. Then come after the questions, we may, instead of wanting to make the motion to accept or reject, we may want to make a motion to postpone so we can investigate some of the questions that I have.
And we can still do that same thing if we have the discussion. All you have to do is vote it down.
Council President,
Yes,
this motion's actually non-debatable.
okay,
You need a 2/3 vote. It's either yes or no.
okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
So I don't know if we need 2/3? Who
Yes, you
voted
need
yes?
2/3.
We had 2, so that's a no.
Okay, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 19, 7th series, authorize and direct sale of property for Barrett Land LLC.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mayor Zuka, second by Councilmember Goshek. Now's the time for discussion.
Yes,
Mr. President, if I may, I just have one question, and I'm all for this project, but I need to know, and frankly, I don't even know who's going to answer this question, but where are we at with gas supply for this project?
We're still working on that. We have a couple of options that we're looking at. Final decisions have not been made, but we are working on it. So it is available. It's just a matter of which company we end up going with.
Okay, so are we still looking at setting up a public utility for gas supply? Or are we going in a different direction now?
I believe we're going to end up going in a different direction. We may still come back to that, but at this point right now, we're looking at a different option.
Okay. I mean, the only concern I have is moving forward with all of this, and then we can't get the gas supply, then what happens?
My understanding is that the agreement, if there's some criteria we couldn't meet, there's an agreement that then everything would be canceled. That's my understanding. Like if Sarah's been the one working on that, like she could probably answer it better than I can. I know we have a couple of options, but we have to be careful what we divulge because we're trying a little competition, so we can't get everything out there.
Council President,
Yes.
with the ethanol plant closing, does that free up some gas and make it available,
Potentially.
potentially?
Okay, well, I haven't heard back on
Okay.
results. I contacted Representative Krisha and asked him to look at it from the state level to put some pressure on the PUC, basically to instruct CenterPoint, you will supply gas. I mean, it's an industrial park. We should, so I just want to let you know that I made that call. I haven't heard back, but we seem open to going down that road.
From what I heard, he is in the process of drafting some legislation that will hold these public utilities responsible for notifying us when there is a shortage issue. Mr. President, I'd like to address a couple things on Facebook posts that a lot of people are taking as facts and truth. In fact, Carol Anderson was telling me about a call she got today where someone was complaining because it was all being sold for $1. So there's just a couple things I'd like to mention.
Please do.
Someone had posted on there, they're against this from the beginning. That's not true because this person actually sent the city contact numbers for gas, taxes, TIF and purchase, the discussion about $1 from the school to the city, $1 from the city to Barrett. Actually, a discussion with Mr. Jones, the superintendent. Barrett, in essence, through TIF will be paying $9,500 per acre, not $1 for 52 acres, slight discrepancy. Smell and sound, I went there today for the 6th time, and I drove up, I rolled down my window, I smelled nothing. I walked into towards the building, I pulled the door open, and I was so busy trying to smell something, I tripped and fell flat on my face in the entryway, so I even know that the tiles don't stink. So to me, this is a little bit of exaggeration, so I would dispute that. School board members, councilmen and women have been there. Nobody has detected anything that they thought was terrible, or even a smell that they thought was putrid, or some of the other words that were used. The attacks on this business that we worked for over a year to try to get here because of the quality of this business and what they give back to the community. We've heard nothing but great from them once again tonight, except for a couple people. To me, that's unacceptable. We're talking about 100 people without jobs approximately in this community, from Delco and the Central Minnesota Renewables closed. Go to them and tell them you don't think we should have these jobs in this community because you thought or you read on Facebook that it has a putrid smell. Somebody posted on there, who profits from this? Geez, I don't know. You think Barrett might want to? Any of you in business not to make money? I don't know. It seems like it makes a lot of sense to me. Other businesses turned down in the last 30 years. Lori, and they set out in that area of the industrial park. Have you been part of that? I know that 50 and 60 years ago, there was talk of a technical college. The city didn't even own that land back then when I know of. We have not turned down anything. We've recruited. Carol Anderson has been a large part of that. Questioning my commitment to children, it was brought up again tonight, along with my mental health issues, of course. Sometimes my wife tells me I'm crazy to do what I do, but I don't think that's an appropriate comment. But my commitment to children, 41 years at Coburn's, 25 in management, and never once did a child ask for a day off and not get it for school, for sports, personal. I even bribed other employees to work for them so I could get them off. Special needs people, Jeff Bogalki, Kathy Hubner, Gerald Check. They still call me boss man, and I bet they've got probably 75 years or more between those three. 9 years on the school board. I have no children. 9 years on the school board to try to help this district, help the community grow. Commitment to community. These people that have all the answers about everything, I've never seen them on a committee, at a meeting. I've been on the school board, council, mayor, EDA, chamber, United Way, NCEDA, RDFA, Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, Sourcewell, who was a large part of this mid-state project. That's not bragging. That's talking about my commitment. Talked to Mr. Jones today. Rumor, that school land, that land out there is for a school. No, it isn't. That was for sale when Steve Jones arrived in town, and they've not even discussed doing it out there. That's why they had a referendum to fix the problems that they had here. And as far as my brother, you know, this dastardly thing of me publicly disclosing, full disclosure, that my brother, who hadn't heard of Barrett when I started working on this over a year ago, that this is some sort of conflict of interest. My brother had worked for two places, not one that was mentioned by somebody present here, to build another case against this project. He was a manager and he lost his job. So he went out and looked for a job and got one. Talking about the city not wanting to get businesses, Carol Anderson told me today those things we're involved with, including community development, EDA, and others, have brought 80-plus businesses or helped 80-plus businesses come to this town and supported them. So, you know, we got half the people saying we don't do anything for businesses, and we got the other half saying, why are you bringing more businesses in? We don't need it. There's not enough help. Let me see here. I guess that's about all I have, except, one other thing. People that are posting these things, when somebody's opposed to it, they tend to delete those. I've seen numerous posts where people have said, how come you deleted my post? Was it because I spoke in favor of it? So you're being misled, and I don't like it. We're all working hard to try to better this community, whether you like me or not, and I think that's part of the big issue for some people here. I'm sorry, we're working our butts off. And there's a lot of people in the crowd that are part of that working their butts off. And if you would please comment on the statute that you referred me to as far as conflict of interest. Could you speak to that? This is our city attorney.
Yeah, so,
Eric.
council, mayor, as far as conflict of interest goes, in a situation like this where You, Mayor, are a voting member on this. It would be a conflict of interest if you had some sort of contractual relationship that would benefit you with Barrett. You know, an example would be, hey, Barrett's gonna pay you money directly if you vote yes. As far as I'm aware, that you don't have a contract like that in place. So since you don't have a contractual benefit, or a contractual agreement that benefits you, or a financial benefit from this situation, there is the perceived conflict of interest, which would be something similar to Barrett has promised your wife a job if you vote yes, where you yourself don't receive a direct benefit, but you know, your wife, your close family does. Again, from what I'm aware of, that's not the situation here, as you have informed us. Your brother currently has a job at the current plant in place, and it's separated from your dealings with this, and it's not dependent or contingent upon your vote one way or the other. And we looked into this, and in our opinion, there's no conflict of interest.
Thank you. The last thing I would say is, I'm sorry I got loud and passionate, but if you need to mislead people to win the fight, you're never going to win the fight, because that's just not fair. That's not the way I operate. That's not the way most people in this room operate. And I was at the League of Minnesota Cities this weekend, and they brought up 2 acronyms, and I've heard that there was a group in this area using one, and it's CAP, C-A-P, and they're lauding Citizens Against Progress. And also at the league, they said they've got a new name for it, and it's called CAVE, C-A-V-E, Citizens Against Virtually Everything, and I'm starting to believe that. Sorry for my rant. I'll return the floor to the president.
Yes, Mr. President, I have a couple of questions, and I'm not saying I'm for or against this right at the moment, because I don't think I was part of the council when the Mid-State building was being discussed and looked at. So I just got a few questions. Who's going to occupy that building? Is that just going to be staff, or are there going to be students and stuff up there also?
She told us earlier that there's students as well.
Okay, so, and maybe our attorney can answer this next question. On zoning, education versus manufacturing, are there proximity setbacks that are in statute, whether state, local, or county level, that restricts the proximity that an educational building and a manufacturing plant can be set?
I am not aware of any, although I was not asked prior to this to look into anything of that matter. However, my understanding is that this location is zoned industrial, so I would tend to believe that there would not be a setback restriction from an educational facility. However, again, I can't speak to whether there is or not in your zoning code, as I was not asked to look into that.
But if there is a code, this could lead into a legal issue later on down the road, correct? If the state has some setback where, say, an education building can't be built within a quarter mile of a strip club or something to that effect, dealing with educational buildings and other types of buildings, this could lead to an issue down the road, could it not?
It could, but typically you would, prior to, you would need building permits and such to build this facility, and those would all be reviewed, all the setback requirements and all zoning requirements, whether state, county, or local requirements, would be reviewed, and would, in order to get the building permits, you would need to satisfy those requirements.
But nobody knows, but
I'm pretty sure if you've driven out there and looked,
I have.
the building is closer to Airborne than it's going to be to this facility. Besides that, there's a parking lot on the west side of Midstate that puts them a further distance from it.
My question-
And they're the ones that chose to build there.
Mr. President, though, my question is, are we following the rule of law according to statute? So I'm just saying, maybe we just need to take a minute, because maybe we could check with the Attorney General's office or the Board of Education and see if there's anything here. So there's other sources we might want to look into, because the decisions we're making here right now a lot of times aren't going to affect a lot of us, because this could be something 10 or 15 years down the road that it might come back to us. And I know we've talked a lot about business, and I have nothing against these guys. I plan on going out and checking out that facility, but I've been pretty busy with the last couple weeks and I just got that Thursday. I was at an event all weekend. I'd like to go out and see what's going on. But the one thing that I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the students that are going to be there. And a lot of times when things like this are discussed and looked at, business has their thumb on the scale once in a while to make things look and weigh things more towards their favor. But I want to really make sure that these students that'll be there, that's why I wanted to know, is it going to be with staff? If it was just staff without students, no problem. But so I want to give them the opportunity on education. So one thing I'm wondering, is there going to be a barrier around mid-state education? Because I know there's trucks and there's a lot of things with traffic up there. Is there going to be anything that's going to stop a special needs child from running out into that road and getting hit by a vehicle? Are they going to have?
That's up to Midstate.
They have
That
staff,
has
don't
nothing
they?
to do with us.
Yes.
But if we approve this sale, aren't we somewhat going to be held liable for that whole thing too? And can anybody answer the question? Is Midstate going to do something for a barrier to keep that from happening?
Mr. President, in my mind, that's got nothing to do with this sale of property.
I would agree.
Mr.
Midstate
President.
has 100 staff and 75 students, according to what somebody said earlier.
Mr. President,
Yes.
according to Midstate, they have to require one-on-one care for certain students. Some aren't required. I mean, that's all in their IEPs in the education end, but they have to have somebody that legally monitors these kids. They just can't let them run off into a road or anything. So that is Midstate's responsibility. I was thinking about, Greg, we've had instances like the other industrial park where there's a daycare in it. Same kind of situation where little kids where trucks and everything are going by. We've looked into that, and the daycare had to comply with certain kind of rules. It was their responsibility to ensure that the kids were safe in that area. And Midstate has the same responsibility out there. It's not up to Barrett, but I also heard that Barrett was willing to work with Midstate to secure and be good neighbors to make sure kids aren't going to just be able to wander into their property and stuff, and that's something I think Midstate and Barrett can work out together. But as far as ordinances and you would know a little bit more about that. We've had these discussions, like I say, in our meetings for
You're looking as far as the setback requirements?
setbacks and things like that.
City code doesn't have anything in it for setback requirements between school and an industrial parcel. Again, we haven't seen the building plans or the building permit for it, but we would be reviewing that. But we don't have anything in the city code requiring a separation in an industrial park between a school and an adjacent property.
And most of our city codes do match up with state codes. We have a tendency, because they're kind of a larger entity than we are, so we want to make sure we comply with what the state has. So I'm sure when they do, Barrett does put in their petition or their plans and that we're going to check into this pretty in-depth to make sure everything's correct.
Mr. President, just going off of the top of my head here and what I can recall. The only thing we had to do with the Midstate building was some sort of variance on parking requirements that we had to prove. That's all I can remember. School district owned the land. This isn't even a 482 project. This is Midstate, independent of our own school district. And they got a permit and they're building their building. I just don't see how the two are related.
So the one Mr. President, the one last questions I have then is, if we haven't even seen the plans, and everything for what Barrett wants to do, if by chance those plans and stuff aren't in compliance with state statutes or other statutes, what happens with this sale then? Does it just not go through, or what happens with that?
Correct, it will get reverted, there'll be a reverter clause that the property will come back.
Or they may change the plans if they're not in compliance, so they aren't in compliance.
And I will say, in earlier discussions, we did have the zoning administrator do some preliminary looking at the facility, the process, what they were going to do to make sure that it would fit within that zoning, and it is zoned industrial. And from the preliminary look, there were no issues with the facility.
And the city would not be held liable for anything that may happen out there with any.
It's an industrial park, there's trucks.
They can't, none of that can come back to us 10 years, 15, 20 years from now.
Anything is possible, Mr. Storley, and Councilmember Storley, anything is possible, but that can happen to any person, anywhere, walking anywhere. I mean, it happens. It's an industrial park. There's industry out there right now with Airborne, with ABS, with Schaefer's, with Northland Building. There's other, potential things looking to expand or to grow out there. It can happen. I mean, it can happen by someone going to work at any of those facilities.
But we're not liable. If something happens at Airborne, they got work comp and stuff. But, I'm just looking at, are there liability issues that, the questions I'm asking I'm getting a pretty good feedback, and I'm not opposed to what we're trying to do. I just want, because I'm not going to be in this seat forever, and I don't want to create a problem for somebody else to come in here and then, like me, I wasn't sure of this Midstate thing because I'm new. So I don't want to create problems with somebody else and then I just walk away and say, well, that's somebody else's problem. Now, I would like to try to prevent that from being an issue later on, where the city ends up, getting into some type of thing because they didn't look into something deep enough or long enough.
In order for them to build, they have to get the permits, which will go through our building inspector, our zoning inspector. It'll go through the engineer to make sure all the codes and everything are met. As far as the city being held liable for something, that's a question nobody can answer. I can't tell you that you can't sue them for something. I can't tell anybody that they can't sue them for something. I mean, that happens,
Yeah,
and we can't
understand
prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and
So I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what's going to happen 10 years from now or 5 years from now or what may happen tomorrow. But before they are issued a permit, they will have to get zoning approval, building approval, and engineering approval.
And that will be in compliance with all state, local, federal,
Yes,
whatever laws
yes,
are.
like any other project we do in this town.
All right, thank you for being patient with me.
Ordinance, call the roll, please.
Liljegren?
Yes.
Lundberg?
Yes.
Zilka?
Yes?
Hurkak?
Yes.
Storley?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Gushik?
Yes.
Knopfler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
New business, resignation of Lisa Lewing, accounting clerk. Administration, accept. Lori.
So as we've discussed a couple of times, we have 2 staff people that potentially, or that had given notice that they will be leaving. Lisa has provided us with her notice. Her last day is this Friday, July 5th. So we would ask the council to accept her resignation regrettingly.
What is the wish of the council?
A motion to accept the resignation of Lisa Lewing.
I'll second that, and I hate to see her go. She's done a wonderful job. I've known her for many years before she started here, and she's done a wonderful job, and I hate to see her go, but I wish her well wherever she's going to Georgia.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Accept recommendation, interview committee. Appoint Kelly Leidenfrost, utility billing clerk. Accept and appoint. Lori.
So we did post both positions. We did look at the utility billing clerk position first. We received 87 applications for that position. Several phone interviews were conducted. We did then interview 10 applicants, and at the end of the day, we are recommending Kelly Leidenfrost for the position of utility billing clerk.
What is the wish of the council?
Move to accept the recommendation.
Second?
Motion by Councilmember Knopfler, second by Councilmember Lundberg. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. License agreement, Crow Wing Cooperative Power and Light Company, Little Falls, Morrison County Airport. Approve and authorize. Lori.
Yes, so Crow Wing Power did some work out near the airport to relocate some electrical lines. Part of it because of the 18th Street, or not 18th, the new road that's going in, I think it's 138th Street, that the county and the city are working on together. And then additional work was done because of being able to backfeed the airport so that they wouldn't have electrical issues. In the case of an outage, it would kind of provide a backfeed for them. So this is an agreement to allow Crow Wing Co-op access to that property to have their underground electrical lines in.
What is the wish of the council?
Motion to approve and authorize the license agreement with Crow Wing Cooperative Power.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Hanson. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Petition, installation of four-way stop signs. Receive. Greg.
Yes, we received a petition for four-way stops. Tonight, we're asking the council to receive the petition. We'll then go back and take a look to verify the signatures and look at the intersection to see if it's warranted. But tonight, we're asking the council just to receive this petition.
What is the wish of the council?
Mr. President, I make a motion to receive this petition for a four-way stop.
Thank you.
Second.
Policy number 83, dog park, approve.
Excuse me, we need a vote on that?
Do we?
Yes.
I thought for
No.
receiving, we just had
Receive.
to have one motion.
Just if it's, no, that's to introduce a resolution, or excuse me, introduce an ordinance.
Sorry?
So-
Motion, then we need a second.
Second.
Correct? Motion by Councilmember Lundberg, second by Councilmember Storley. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Policy number 83, dog park, approve. Greg.
Yeah, as you're aware, the city's in the process of creating a dog park in town here for the local dogs as well as the Humane Society and such. And this is kind of the list of rules that we had discussed at our work session. This is now in policy format so that we can post it at the site as well as post it on the website so that folks that are looking to use the dog park are aware of what the requirements would be. So tonight we're asking for the council to approve the attached policy number 83 for the dog park.
What is the wish of the council?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve policy number 83, dog park.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Hanson, second by Councilmember Knopfler. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Request for proposal, city banking, consider. Lori.
We had one of the local financial institutions approach us regarding changing our banking to another institution here in town. rather than just take the proposal or look at that one particular proposal, John and I discussed it and thought it would be best to go out for RFPs, requests for proposals and giving all the banks in the area an opportunity to look at it. So what we are requesting tonight is authorization from the council to do requests for proposals for the city's banking.
What is the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to accept the request for proposals, city banking.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Goshek, second by Councilmember Storley. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President. Lori, what kind of things are you looking for? Like, what kind of interest? Do we have certificates of deposit, and what exactly is it we're looking for in a bank?
This would basically be checking for both our payroll and our general account. We do have certificates, we have investments, they have to be collateralized and all that kind of stuff, so they're placed in different institutions. Some of them are a lower amount so that the FDIC is what collateralizes them. Anybody that we have more than $250,000, they have to be collateralized. So, we shop those investments around so that we try and get the best interest rate we can for what we're investing. But this would be our general checking and for general and for payroll.
I imagine there's not really a significant amount of money either way. Who does the reconciliation on these? Do you do that?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Council President?
Yes.
I'm just wondering how often a city actually changes banks.
The last time that we did RFPs for banking was in 2014. We have here switched banks,
In the
I
30
don't know
years
how
you've
many
been
different
here?
times, but yeah, we've switched banks. Some cities do it every year. I particularly don't care for that because it's a lot of work. Just to get all of the automatic withdrawals and deposits and everything switched over. It can be a lot of work. Plus, you have to order checks with different banking information on them all the time. So
In 2014, when we did the request for proposals, did we actually switch banks then?
yes, yeah. And we've switched a couple of different times, maybe. I know we were at one bank for well over 10 years, and then we've been I want to say as little as 3 years at one financial institution.
Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Resolution 2019-48, Area Transportation Partnership, Bike and Pedestrian Safety Improvements. Adopt. Greg.
So as the council is probably aware, we did receive $520,000 in federal funds for the Transportation Alternative Grant. That includes trail along Pine Avenue, some sidewalk on 9th Street Northeast, and then 3 rapid flashing beacons along 27, both at Lemberg School, Mary of Lourdes Elementary School, and then on 27 by Lincoln School on the west side, Mary of Lourdes Middle School on the west side. This resolution in front of you here, basically it says we acknowledge the $520,000 that the federal government is going to be giving us. The matching, which is about $130,000, which includes time for engineering staff, the city is committed to matching those funds towards this project to get the match. So in a nutshell, that's what we're looking at for this resolution. They do require us in order to get those 520 to pass this so that they recognize that we've got the funds allocated for that project.
What is the wish of the council?
Motion to approve resolution 2019-48.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Knopfler. Any discussion?
Greg, is this money, Mr. President, Greg, is this money already in the budget as far as the matching funds? Or?
So the $520,000, we don't get that until the year 2023. It's 5 years out. Likely we'll do this project ahead of time, so we'll probably do it in the next probably 2-3 years, and then we can budget at that point in time for those funds, and then we'll get paid back the federal funds in 2023.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Resolution, call the roll, please.
Lundberg.
Yes.
Zilka.
Yes.
Hurkak.
Yes.
Storley.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik.
Yes.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Liljegren.
Yes.
Carries.
Resolution 2019-49, Minnesota Public Facilities Authority Bond Purchase and Project Loan Agreement, Point Source Implementation Grant, Wastewater Improvement Project. Adopt. Lori.
So this resolution is the approval for the loan agreement for the funding of the PFA funding for our wastewater project. The grant agreement would include the $8 million that we get from PFA, along with a loan that's at 30 years at 1% interest. And this is a little better than what we had initially thought. We thought we would go over 20 years, but because of the project we're doing, they're allowing us to extend it over 30 years.
What is the wish of the council?
Motion to adopt Resolution 2019-49, Minnesota Public Facilities Authority bond.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Storley, second by Councilmember Liljegren. Any discussion?
Council President, is this a new note in addition to the $7 million that we already owe in the outstanding sewer notes?
Yes.
Okay, so we will owe a total of $23 million?
Correct.
Any other questions? Resolution, call the roll, please.
Zilka.
Yes.
Hurkak.
Yes.
Storley.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gushik.
Yes.
Knopfler.
Yes.
Liljegren.
Yes.
Lundberg.
Yes.
Carries.
City Council reports on city authorities, boards, bureaus, commissions, and committees.
Mr. President, I would just, sad news, the passing of Chuck Volbert, who was a 36-year employee, I believe, well-liked by many of the staff. Always had a smile on his face. Really good man. The services are 11 a.m. tomorrow morning at M. Bloom Brenny, so if anybody, it'd be nice to see some support for the family. That's all.
Chief, I did have one person bring up to me, and I didn't get to it because we had a short work session or a long work session. He said he stopped to talk to you about Edmund Drive. At least stopped in to talk to somebody at the police department about Edmund Drive. That's the one that we mentioned before.
I've got multiple complaints out there, and I've had staff out there.
Okay.
Other residents call as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, I don't recall us doing, going through constituent complaints, because I did have one, something about, on the lighting downtown. Is there a reason that those lights aren't working because of the construction that's going on, or?
Yeah, all of our lights are interconnected, and so because we're replacing the wiring and the lights on 27, the other ones are out as well.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Mr. President, Greg, during the last big rain, you come from the east heading into town, and there was water right across the road. Was there a plugged sewer drain, or what was the deal there?
Which stretch was that on?
That was a couple blocks just before where you get detoured to come up around town
On the east side?
on the east side.
Yeah, all the storm sewers are plugged off because of the construction.
Right, so starting at 9th Street all the way into town, they've got inlet
Is
protection.
it
so
necessary that they're plugged up that much that it goes right across the road, or?
It does slow down the amount of volume that goes in there. It's trying to
Okay.
keep the sediment and leaves out of the storm sewer. Because of the nature of construction, there's a lot more dirt that's around, and so it's a much smaller space to fit in there. And so we do have to keep an eye on that, and they do clean those grates after every rain event to make sure that it's as clean as possible, but it does slow down the amount of water that can get in those grates.
Yeah, there was some cars hitting that, and it was splashing up pretty good, so.
We'll adjourn our meeting at 8:25.